Welcome to Parenting Off-Script, the podcast that dives deep into the beautifully complex world of special educational needs and disabilities, or SEND parenting. If you're raising a child with extra needs, or perhaps navigating parenthood while managing your own SEND identity, you know that the rule book was thrown out long ago. You're not following a guide, you are truly parenting off-script. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Tony Addison, who is a coach and public speaker. Tony, welcome to the podcast. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Let's start by tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do in your professional life and how your personal life has informed that.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And I suppose to describe myself a little bit, I am based in Whitley. I've got my family I've got my long-term partner with me. I've got two little children who are mischievous. But yeah, they can be a little bit cheeky at times as well. So I've got Noah, who's age 10, and I've got Aoife, who's 6 as well. So Noah's on the pathway. Noah's been diagnosed as autistic and with ADHD as well. And Aoife's also on the pathway as well for neurodivergence. We're not quite sure just yet. In terms of a little bit more about me, I would say to describe myself, I've had a long career in the civil service. So I've had a 19-year career in the civil service where very institutionalised. Started off as an admin assistant and worked my way up through 6 different grades, 12 different roles, so lots of different elements of the civil service. Loved different parts of it, but worked my way up to be a senior leader over that period of time. But over that period of time, I recognised I was going through a bit of a journey myself, so I ended up doing a business degree. Loved that. Started doing roles such as a business manager, business change manager, stakeholder and product manager. Went into senior central planning kind of activities, and then worked my way into a business partner role. So that's working with your directors, your senior leaders across large operational areas of 4,000 staff, 8,000 staff. So it's quite interesting, quite high level. But I also recognise that when I got to the highest grade that I did, that there was just something not quite right. There's just something within me that just wasn't happy. And I needed to understand a little bit more about that. And that's when I hired a coach myself. So I hired a coach to understand a little bit about my values, a little bit about my strengths, what makes me tick, what makes me motivated. And I recognised quite quickly that I'm all about making a difference, acting with honesty, integrity, trust, being creative, and also working with like-minded people as well. And I wasn't doing any of that in terms of the role. And also, as I started going up through the grades, my little boy was born and things just changed. My first kind of set of values were all about achievement and trying to achieve as much as I possibly could, which I feel like I did in my own way. But once you have a child, things just change, don't they?
Definitely.
And certainly as soon as the diagnosis of autism and ADHD were kind of new anyway when he was around about 2, but recognised that actually some things were changing. And for us, and in terms of my particular role within my work environment, yes, it was quite stressful anyway, but then it's also stressful being at home with a child. I ended up then looking at myself, understanding what it is that I really wanted in the future. And I transitioned career. So I transitioned my career over to Macmillan Cancer Support. And I loved it there. Absolutely loved it. But I also recognised that it's a charity and it's at the beck and call of how much money they can receive in terms of funding. In the long-term future for myself, I needed to take a little bit more control over that. So part of my rationale here was to take that step back and understand what it is that I really want. I started studying a master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. Fascinating, but definitely recommend it if you ever get the chance. But with that, I then started dipping my toe in the water with coaching. And I really loved that. I really, really loved that. And that's when I got to that stage, I recognized actually that's what I want to do. So that's where it brings me to our conversation today, that I started coaching specifically professionals who are senior executives who were also parenting children with complex needs. So I've got skin in the game. I know about it. I know the senior world, senior leader world. but I also know what it's like parenting a child with complex needs and how challenging that can be at times as well. And sometimes that can lead to other things like burnout. So that's just a little bit of the potted history. I'll also go into loads more detail as we go through our conversation, but just to give you a little bit of a context around where I'm at now and moving forwards, I would love to do more public speaking. That's my angle, my career angle for the future, and I think it'll tie in quite nicely with my ecosystem of what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah. What are you trying to achieve? What's your overarching goal, Tony?
So that's a really good question. So if I nailed it, I would definitely say that I am looking to help professionals with disabilities to be the best versions of themselves, to really know about their own identity, to embrace exactly who they are, to be happy, to be confident, and make the changes in the world that they want to see. But part of my process to get to that stage is because I know if I'm building a business, I need to make it sustainable.
Yeah.
I can't just help everybody from a pro bono point of view or a low cost point of view. Although I would love that, I get lots of energy and I get lots of enjoyment out of that. I do recognize that if I want to have a long-term business, I've got to make sure that I am making it sustainable. And that's why I focus towards those senior leaders who perhaps can afford it, but also knowing that I'll still be making a difference by helping them go through a process and understand how challenging it is if they're masking who they are at work, but also they're stressed at home. That's not good for themselves or their children as well. And what I'm trying to do is use part of that fee that I get from them to help people who can't afford it as well. So that's really an important thing for me. So yeah, to kind of give you that idea, that's what drives me, that's what motivates me, and that's all in alignment with my values.
Yeah.
And I know as long as I stick to my values and I'm working in alignment with them, I won't go far wrong. And that's a nice place to be, I think.
You mentioned masking there. Now, you've described yourself as a master of disguise. Tell me a little bit more about that.
In terms of, I have a physical upper limb difference. And it's something that I'm really proud of now in terms of being disabled. But that's not something I would ever describe myself as in the past. Certainly from the ages of 10 to 37, which is a long time, 27 years, I hid my own disability. I hid my hand. So I knew what masking is like. I became really good at it, and I'm not proud of that, but I did become really good at it where I would hide it in all sorts of situations. Certainly in a work environment when you're networking, shaking people's hands.
Yeah.
That can be quite challenging. So that's one element of masking, and I did go through a process to try and unhide that. But the catalyst for me to unhide it was Noah. So when Noah was diagnosed with autism and ADHD, I recognised that one of the really powerful things for me is that I never wanted him to be uncomfortable in his own skin. I wanted him to kind of live his life, never have to mask. And the beauty is that he talks to me about it all the time now. But what I had to do is I had to unhide my own disability as well. And if I didn't do that, that would be like, it just wouldn't work. And he'd be seeing me hiding my hand, put my hand in my pocket, which is not great. So I went through a challenging process of over 100 days. I set myself some physical, emotional, psychological challenges. I did skydiving. I did stand-up comedy. I've tried to fly a helicopter. I'm not a pilot, so definitely don't let me take you in a helicopter. But I did lots of things where I stood up in front of 600 people and told my story about my hand. And by the end of it, it really worked, and it was challenging. But by the end of it, I ended up creating this lovely habit where I never hid my hand again. So I had my hand shown all of the time, and talked about it online to create that accountability. So I knew the art of masking in the first place, but then unhiding it and embracing who I am. And I recognised that senior leaders do that an awful lot in a work environment. So if I was to say to you, and you'll know very well in terms of you're in a work environment, you're going for a cup of tea and someone asks you, how are you? The stereotypical answer will be totally fine, everything's fine. But behind the scenes, nobody would really be knowing that your child might have just had a meltdown. You've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's where I say that I'm very aware that masking is it can come naturally to people, but it's also a process that you cannot hide from as well as a senior leader. And the more that you do it, the more that you actually be honest about who you are, the better it is for yourself. The better you are in a work environment, the better culture that you create as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I know about masking, my lived experience, but also what it can be like as a senior leader as well.
And that lived experience of masking, both from your perspective, but also from the senior leaders that you're working with, how has that informed how you parent Noah?
I recognise that as someone who was living a stressful life, if I had a very challenging day at work, when it came to then home time, finishing my day at work, that my energy levels would be totally low, and my stress levels would be high, and my tolerance levels will be a lot less as well.
Yeah.
And that can be challenging because it's not fair on Noah or like Aoife if I am really tired and I'm not the best version of myself with them. And I recognised that during some certain parts of my career that was coming out, and I needed to take that step back and understand what's the best way for me to approach this. What's the best way that I can be the best version of myself at work, but also at home as well. So I'm enjoying both sides of the house.
Yeah.
So I had to take steps to do that, and there's definitely ways you can go about doing it. But for me, it was more like I love to go for a walk on the beach in the morning, go for a nice cup of tea. I know myself well enough around my own anxiety levels. If I need to reduce my anxiety levels, I can go and play football.
Yeah.
I can go. I quite like meditating. Or mindfulness. I've got into that a little bit more as well.
So are those things that for you, instead of masking, help you manage some of that overwhelm and some of those really difficult feelings? So it could be, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, so I'm going to go for that walk on the beach, rather than just pretend everything's fine.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as much as I would try and pretend everything's fine, I would then feel my anxiety levels rising, and knowing that actually, if I need to talk to Noah and try to get him out of his meltdown or go through the process that would be really helpful for him, my mind wouldn't be at that stage. I'll be thinking of other things. Whereas if I preempt that, if I do things to help myself, so I can put my own mask on first, so that I can help him be the best version of himself, I would definitely describe that's the way that I do it.
I think that's so important, and a lot of what you just said really resonates with me, because I was in a senior leadership role. I worked in PR and communications for 15 years, and very similar to you, I was really ambitious, I just wanted to get to the next level. And then when I had a child, and especially a child with additional needs, that really changed my perspective. But I was masking at work, I was pretending everything was fine. Whereas at home, it was the sleepless nights. It was, he's been suspended from school again, or I've got to go through the EHCP process, or I've got to apply for DLA, like all of this stuff that was going on in my personal life that you can't get out of your mind. But at work, I was like, no, I'm fine. And I think last year it reached a point where I couldn't do both, and I couldn't keep masking. And so I've actually taken a step back. So I'm in a less senior role. It's actually a role I enjoy much more. So it's worked out really well. But I felt like for my own well-being, I couldn't keep doing that. And I do wonder if that's something that quite a few parents go through, because masking continually like that is exhausting, isn't it? It's so draining. I
think you've hit the nail on the head with that as well, around when you're first going through a certain part of your career, you've got a certain set of values. And like I said earlier, they change as soon as you have a child, and unless you actually take that step back and you recognize actually that your values have changed, what's important to you has changed, what gives you energy has changed, or the way that you actually get that energy is no longer there as well. You've got certain levels of capacity that might have gone. So making sure that you're not just continuing on that path to burnout, and you're taking that step back to understand, okay, so what is it that I can reduce that? What can I do to preempt that? Is it a case of creating extra structures within your work environment as it is right now, whether you reduce your non-work, you have a non-working day, or you reduce your hours, or you have a certain break within the day where you know you might get phone calls. And part of that just doesn't happen by itself. You've got to have those conversations. You've got to have a little bit of a think about, can I engineer this within my own work environment? If I can, amazing. And if you need help with that, there's people out there like myself that can help you with that. But if that situation can't arise, then you need to probably have a bit more of a think. Is that role, that job, the right thing for you?
Yeah.
Or do you need to pivot in a slightly different direction? Because if you don't, it can have a harmful impact on your health, your mental health, your well-being. It's impacted mine in the past, so I do recognise that as well. And it's just really important. And it could be something that might be the best thing you ever do. Like you've just highlighted, you really enjoy the role that you're in now. But it means that you're a different version of yourself when you're around your child or your children. And that's a really helpful approach to have. But unless you do take that step back and have a think about it, it can be quite difficult, and you might you might just be going through the motions and not even realize it.
I think there's also a lot to be said for if you're working somewhere that is truly supportive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of employers, and my employer is one of these, are brilliant at supporting people who have caring responsibilities in whatever form that takes, and, will be flexible and don't want you to mask, want you to sort of be able to talk about what's going on in your life and find support for that. But there's still a lot of employers who don't offer that supportive environment. And I imagine it's those workplaces where you're going to get more parents who get completely burnt out and their battery's totally drained from masking all the time.
I wouldn't disagree with that. And I think there's a strapline there around trying to get that work-life balance. And typically for a parent of a child with special educational needs, that's just not realistic. It can be very challenging. But the more that you're in a work environment that can adapt to you and can really help you be the best version of yourself at work, you need to create that psychological safety in a work environment for any employee to show up as themselves. And once that is the case, you recognise that actually this employee is thriving.
Yeah.
They're super happy. They want to do well. Their performance levels are really high. And what's the correlation there? And the correlation typically is that they are psychologically safe to say what's on their mind, and obviously in a reasonable way, but do it where they're collaborating with other people, they're seeing what's not going so right, and they feel safe to be able to do that. They're super creative, problem solvers, whereas previously, if they are not safe to even be themselves, or if they're a leader and they feel like they have to show up in a certain way and go, everything's totally fine, everything's great, but they're also super stressed and they could be snappy with people, that can create a bit of a toxic environment at times. And I've seen it. When really all you need to do is scratch under the surface, create that environment where they feel comfortable sharing that things aren't going so well, they might need a bit more extra support. That is where you'll see a beautiful environment to work in. And I've seen that within my previous roles within Macmillan Cancer Support, being able to help create environments where people enjoy what they do, they show up as themselves, everybody works together as a team. That's really helpful. And it meant that I was the best version of myself.
Yeah.
And I could actually show my hand disability for the first time in a work environment. And I never did that in the past.
Yeah.
And that probably, hopefully it showed in the work that I was producing, in the teams that I was leading, or the projects I was leading on as well. So there's definitely something in that, isn't there, around creating that space where people are comfortable being themselves. But some companies don't know how to do that. Some teams don't know how to do that. But there is ways and there's mechanisms that can help people do that as well.
Yeah. I want to go back to work-life balance.
Okay.
My opinion is that work-life balance doesn't really exist for parents of children with SEN.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you have an opinion on?
I would love to have work-life balance, and I would definitely, and before I had a child, I think, work-life balance will be amazing. You get to do all of these different things, and you get to be super happy all of the time. But as a leader, as a parent of someone with special educational needs, with complex needs, it just doesn't happen, because 1 minute I could be in a meeting talking to 20 different leaders on a call. And because I'm working from home because of COVID, the tradition now was to work from home. But then outside of my door, I would hear my child having a meltdown.
I've been in that situation.
And okay, you've just got to switch hats quite quickly. Sometimes it might be a case of I've had to excuse myself from a meeting that I might have been leading, to then go next door and try and calm the situation down.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, like work-life balance. But then that also creates high levels of cortisol. It means that it certainly takes me a while to get back to a calm state, especially if it's depending on what's happened as well. So in terms of work-life balance, that's what I mean. If someone says, you go ahead and have that work-life balance, that would be great. It doesn't always happen in practice as well. What's it been like for you? Have you had any situations like that?
Oh, so many. I mean, only a few weeks ago, I was on a call with our board of directors. Okay. So like really important call. And my son came in and started having a meltdown literally right behind me in the study. And it was it was a screamer, like really, really extreme meltdown. And I had to say, I sent a little Teams message to my line manager, who's our deputy chief exec, who's also on the call, and said, look, I'm ever so sorry, my son's come in, he's really struggling. And luckily he was like, absolutely, you go have a chat with him, calm him down, come back in when you're ready, because he understands. Mm-hmm. He also has a child with additional needs, so he completely gets it. And I think that goes back to the point about psychological safety. I felt psychologically safe to say to my manager, actually, this is going on at the moment and I need to go attend to that. And I knew that it wouldn't be, well, no, that's not an option. You need to stay on this call regardless. Mm-hmm. I knew that he'd say, no problem, you go deal with that. So gosh, I've had so many situations like that. And I think especially working from home and I mean, I don't know about your children, but with Kit, my eldest, he does go to a specialist school, but there's no wraparound for kids with additional needs. He just wouldn't be able to function in any kind of wraparound, and he usually has to have like a 1-to-1 ratio with staff. So if he's not in school, he's at home. So if I've got a call at 3:30 when he's out of school, he's going to be there as well. And yes, I've had a lot of those moments, and I think for me it is that cortisol spike has been really difficult to deal with. I think especially because, the last couple of years I've realised that I've probably got ADHD, just never been diagnosed. And it was something that prior to having children, I kind of managed through having an awful lot of downtime outside of work because I didn't have children to look after. And so it would be, right, I'm going to go, sit in a dark room and not talk to anybody for a while so that I can just have a break. When you're a parent, and especially when you're a parent of a child with complex needs, that's not an option, is it? So managing that cortisol spike has been really key for me. And I've made some big lifestyle changes in the last year that have really helped with that, including changing my career, taking a step down from that really senior role and working in an organisation where I have that psychological safety. You've said, I believe, that life's not a scale, it's a high voltage switch. Can you give me a moment where you've had to switch between work and crisis? So was that an example there of being on that? That was
call? An exact example of a high voltage switch where you have to be, certainly in the work that I've been involved in the past, you have to be switched on, you have to know what's going on in meetings, and you have to be on your game, especially if you're facilitating a call, and I'm trying to understand actually what's going on, what's the strategy, bringing everybody else into the conversation. But if you've got, like you said, same situation where my child is someone who goes to a special, an autism specialist school, and they finish at 3:30, get home for just shortly after that. And I've still got meetings after that as well. And previously, I would say if I had have heard my child having a meltdown, I would have got really tense, and I would have had to either block it out and let it just kind of work itself out. And that was probably more of a sign that I was in a not a totally unsafe environment, but an environment where I couldn't be honest with everybody around me, and I had to present myself in a certain way as a leader. Whereas when I moved over to Macmillan, I was open and honest about my work environment, my home life environment, that at times things happen, and I might just have to apologise and move off the call. Apologise not so much, but more just say, excuse myself for 10 or 15 minutes, can somebody else take over? And then move straight away to try and help that situation. But it's still quite stressful trying to manage the meltdown and then go back into a work environment and go, okay, so what have I missed?
Yeah.
So that can be a high voltage switch. It could be, I've got a meeting that's just about to take place at 9:00. My child doesn't want to go to school.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? I've had a situation where I'm leading a program. The very initial call was taking place at 9:00. There's 20 people arriving at the call, and I've had to apologise and say, sorry, I'm going to be late for this meeting that I'm the project leader for, because I've got a situation that I need to manage at home. And I didn't feel so bad about it because I knew that the people on the call had the right characteristics. They knew that the way that I tried to set things up, where everyone could be honest about things that are going to happen themselves at home. So it felt that I could do that, but it was still quite challenging at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's things that you have to manage, or try to manage in the best way that you possibly can as well.
I think that's an interesting example you just gave, because I think mornings can be especially stressful if you're a parent of a child with additional needs, because a lot of those children will refuse school, or even with my son, getting him out of bed, he will often refuse to get out of bed. We've made a rod for our own back because last year we got him a very high cabin bed, so we can't.
That'll do it.
We used to be able to just sort of scoop him out of the bed gently and help him, but now it's like 6 foot up in the air. I can't climb that ladder to go get him. But when you're starting your day with so much stress, and I'm really fortunate in that I'm in a role that is mostly working from home. But previously, when I'd be in a role where I had to be in the office certain days, those mornings where I knew, right, I've got to leave the house at 8:00 because I've got to get on the metro and get to the office, but my son's not getting out of bed, and you start the day so stressed. I think it's even more so if you are, say you're working shift patterns or you work in a hospital or something like that, and you have to be there at that point in time. And I don't think we talk about that. I don't think we talk about how much stress and how much energy is taken every morning for an awful lot of parents to even get their child ready for the day and get themselves to work. And I do think it must be quite a big factor in a lot of parents changing careers or having to opt out of the workplace because of those caring responsibilities.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I've always tried to engineer, I think, a little bit ahead around, okay, so I know that I can't have a stereotypical 9-to-5 job because it just won't work for us as a family entity. Because although we can try and create routines so that like Noah and Aoife typically know where they're going to be at 8:00 in the morning, 10 past, 30:30, when they're leaving the house, sometimes things can just happen.
Yeah.
So we had a moment just last week where, if you've ever seen Home Alone, where they forget to put their alarms or the alarms go off.
Oh, yeah.
We had a moment, we've never ever done this, but we had a moment where our alarms just didn't go off. And normally we'll have a good 1 hour and 15 minutes to calmly get ready, and then make sure that everybody knows where they need to be by 8 o'clock. We woke up and it was 7:45, and we had a situation where it was just that mad rush.
Yeah.
And I would say in the past, both Noah and Aoife would have struggled with that massively, and we would have struggled with that. But we try to use a few tactics of just making a game of it, making it fun, and trying to say, okay, right, this has happened. Let's see how quickly we can get ready and how we can do it. And in the past, I would have been super tense around this. This is going to wreck the rest of our day. But because I've engineered a career where I can be a bit more flexible, it didn't work out so bad. Whereas in the past, it would have probably ruined the rest of our day. Everybody would have been meltdowns, all of us, and it would have been quite stressful. So that's just a little bit of a snippet of a real life situation that happened just last week. But like you said, being in having to change careers just to enable that is not something that everybody can do as well.
No. It's something that I'm very aware of my privilege in that I was able to say, right, I'm going to take a job that is more flexible, but it paid less. But actually, I was in a position where, okay, we could just about manage that. A lot of people aren't in that position, and that's really, really difficult. I think also my co-parent, Arlen, who's been on this podcast in the past, who you know, when it became apparent when Kit was a toddler that his needs were really quite complex, he switched to self-employment. And that was because you just couldn't have two parents in a 9-to-5 full-time job while also parenting a child with additional needs. And particularly when we had a really awful reception year for Kit, where he was being suspended multiple occasions, and you'd get a call at 5-6 o'clock in the evening saying, yep, he can't come into school tomorrow because he's being suspended. We were incredibly fortunate because Alan's self-employed, so he was like, okay, that's no problem, I'll step in, I'll manage that. But if you're a nurse and you're on shift at 7 o'clock the next morning, or you're a single parent, or like, what are you meant to do? So it's really, really difficult. And I think the work that you're doing with people to ensure that they have that psychological safety at work, especially if they're senior leaders, I think that's so critical, both for them, but also for setting a culture within their workplaces that actually people can have that flexibility that they need, and they can have that psychological safety. Because if the senior leaders are working towards that and they know the benefits of that for themselves, other people in the organisation will feel that as well.
I know firsthand how challenging it can be. Same as you, and sorry that you've had to go through the same process as well. I know it from firsthand experience that it can be really difficult. And I'm lucky that I work hand in hand with my partner to try and balance things as much as possible. And we have a little bit more awareness about the SEND process now. And when I've described Noah being at a special educational needs school now, that wasn't the case previously. So he was at a mainstream school and going through the same process, the same situation as your little one, of having lots of meltdowns. It was an open plan school, wasn't designed for anybody with autism. No. And by the end of it, he was spending all of his time outside of his class or in a glorified cupboard, if you like, where there was no windows or doors. And he spent all of his time there, but he was disengaging from work. So we knew that he needed to go to a different environment where he could thrive. But to get to that stage, it took a long time. It took changes to the educational healthcare plan.
Yeah.
It took lots and lots of meetings, phone calls every single day that take up your time. And
constantly advocating, and it's a full-time job in itself, isn't it?
It's intense.
Yeah.
And certainly if I didn't have my partner there to balance things out, I certainly recognise how challenging that would have been anyway. So I've got that to be thankful for, but it was still phone calls, it was still expectations of, okay, I'm going to pick my child up from school and I'll get that head tilt of, okay, I need to have a word because something's happened today. And it got to the stage where my little boy was getting restrained by adults 17 times in one term. And we tried, as soon as we recognised that, we needed to speed up the process. But even still, it took 2 years in full. And we had to go to a tribunal because there was lots of clashes around, okay, what schools are going to go to next? And this is all whilst working at the same time and trying to concentrate on paying the bills. But you've also got to make sure that you're doing something that's really challenging, but the right thing to do for your child's long-term future. This is a happy story in the end because eventually we did go to tribunal. The judge kind of went in our favour and was devastated at the process that we had to go through of reading 1,000-page documents. And so that was quite challenging. But at the end of it, Noah is now at a school where he's totally thriving. He's super happy. He's the best version of himself. And he's engaging in learning as well. He went up 2 or 3 grades in his maths, writing, everything within the first term, which just shows that being in the right environment was helpful for him.
Yeah.
And it makes me happy knowing that he's happy as well. So that's part of what I'm aiming towards for these leaders, knowing that actually they can be that version, like that person that can help their children as well.
Our story is really, really similar. Mm-hmm. We fought for 2 years for the right environment for Kit. And I think at the start of that 2 years, as parents who weren't familiar with the world of SEN and didn't recognise, I've talked earlier about the realisation that I probably have ADHD. Yeah. Arlen, my kid's dad, feels that he probably has autism or ASD. But at that point, we were like, oh, no, we don't want him to go to a special school. No, we want him to be in mainstream. The fight we ended up having, same as you, for 2 years. And now Kit is in a specialist school and he's thriving. He's only been there since last September, but he's starting to write. He's starting to read short words. He's really engaging with learning. He's so much more regulated. Mm-hmm. And it is amazing. Like, we had to fight, but now he's in the right environment and he is learning and he's thriving. And what really brought it home to me actually was a couple of weekends ago. I took him down to London on the train and we went to the Science Museum because he loves science, particularly loves like space and astronauts and all of that. Who doesn't? It's really cool. Yeah. But I wasn't sure how it was going to go because he does have quite extreme sensory challenges. And obviously London is a busy place, lots of people, there's lots of noise, but he did brilliantly on the train down from Newcastle to London, which is not a short journey. Mm-hmm. We had a short tube journey, which he didn't love because it's so incredibly noisy, but he put his ear defenders on. He sat with me. He stayed regulated. He was incredible at the Science Museum. He was so calm. He was so engaged. He loved the space floor. And then we went up to an upper level, which was the medicine floor, which was all about like health and like the history of medicine. And there was a thing about vaccines. There was a little video about like how vaccines were discovered and all of that. He was asking me all these questions about science. And I just thought, this is a child who's supported in his learning now. And he's having a great time and he wants to learn more. Yeah. And so he's taking this fun experience into a learning experience. Whereas a couple of years ago, it would have been very, very different. Very, very different. And yeah, all credit to the staff at those schools because I think they're incredible. And I think the way that they look at each individual child and work out how to engage them in learning is amazing. And they don't get enough credit for it. I want to talk briefly about self-care and burnout. Okay. So this is something, when I've gone to the GP and said, I'm incredibly stressed and I've sort of explained my situation. I've got a child with additional needs. I'm told, just do some more self-care. Why don't you just have a nice bath? Or, all of this. And in your view, Tony, why does that kind of advice really miss the point for SEN parents and especially those in leadership roles?
So I would definitely agree with what you're saying, that self-care is important in the grand scheme of things. We all know that. But from a SEN parent, sometimes it's just not helpful if you're getting advice to do it. So yeah, why don't you go for that walk, go for that meditation, go for that yoga? But in essence, sometimes it's just papering over those cracks. So, there's a fundamental structural issue. And if you're just papering over those cracks, it might work in getting somebody's anxiety levels down from a 9 to an 8, but it's quickly going to go back up to a 9 and a 10, and something else is going to happen. And it's treating that systemic issue more like an individual failure for those parents. And that should be flipped around for me. We all know that willpower is that finite resource. And as much as you can try, you just can't yoga or meditate your way out of that broken schedule. So that's something else that needs to be fixed. That's something else that needs to be looked at in a slightly different way.
Do you think burnout is a structural failure? Is it a failure of the society that we operate in? Because I think burnout can often be framed as a personal failure, or it can feel like a personal failure, like, oh, I've not done enough self-care, or I've not done this. But actually, do you think like the systems in which we operate mean that burnout is really likely for a lot of parents?
A lot of parents are set up for failure. I'd definitely describe it as that. And it's like, if you have an example of a bridge collapsing, you don't blame the steel, you don't blame the equipment for being weak. It's more like you blame the architect for that structural design failure as well. So it's the same for a work environment, isn't it? If an individual is not well in themselves, something else has happened, you can't necessarily blame that individual. It's the environment. Same for Noah. He was getting blamed for being misbehaving, but actually it was the environment that was causing his behavioural issues as well. So you need to re-engineer the role, not fix the person themselves.
So if somebody's listening to this and they feel like, oh, I'm failing at everything, what's the first structural question they should ask instead?
I've got a term for this. I call it the inauthenticity tax, where you're not actually being yourself. So where you're paying the highest tax. So you can frame that in a way of what's taking the most time, what's taking the most energy out of your day. Is it that early morning commute? Is it the stress in the morning? Is it the 5 o'clock meeting that you've got in place? Is it a lack of transition time from work to home life as well? And once you know what that is, you can certainly do something about it. So those are quick wins. Those are something that you can do yourself today. You can do it tomorrow. And try and understand actually what is it that's taking the most energy out of your day and the most time, and what you can do about that in the first instance. I'll definitely say that.
I wanted to talk about the perspective of dads. So I think especially if you are a father in a senior leadership role at work, there's this pressure to be a provider, financial provider, but also to be like a rock at home. Is that something that you can relate to? Is that something that you see a lot with the people that you work with?
I can absolutely relate to that. So my whole upbringing always kind of would have described leadership from being that stoicism, that stoic background. You have to be the man of the house. You have to fix things. I need to be in control, and that control element stuck with me. It's still with me now, and I still try and manage. I try and control the level that I control things. But if you bring it back to autism, you can't fix autism, and nor should you. And you can't fix these systems overnight. And for a parent, that can create that sense of, certainly for me, that sense of helplessness, and that can be quite challenging too. So that's definitely something that resonates quite highly with me.
What made it difficult to admit that journey as a parent of a child with additional needs was impacting you? So both as a dad and as someone in a senior leadership role.
This is something that resonates with me throughout my life of unhiding. So because of the things that I can talk about this from two different elements. So from a personal element growing up, I created a scenario where I hid my hand for one day, I hid it for a week, I hid it for a month because of some negative instances that I had as a child. And I didn't mean for that to happen. But then when it came to unhiding, it was very challenging. I ended up creating behaviours of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and it was low self-worth, and just not like your confidence was knocked. So when it came to unhiding in that scenario, it was the fear of failure, and you can apply all of that to a senior leader role as well. Because if a senior leader typically is valued or shown to be vulnerable, that in times gone by, those connotations were of weakness.
Yeah.
You're not gonna you're not gonna trust this person. So it was quite challenging to do that. But what I realised that the more vulnerable that you were, you become that next level of leader, and people trust you so much more. You create that specific culture where people can be safe to be who they are as well. And I feel like that is something that as soon as I started to share my stories, my real life stories, it resonated with other people. They're like, "Oh, me too." That's exactly what's going on in my life. And it meant that instead of those coffee mornings where you just say, "Oh, everything's fine," you go, "Is it fine though?"
Yeah.
And then you get a little bit more about what's going on in the real world as well for them. And you can connect a little bit more with people individually.
So do you feel like that, being able to share that kind of vulnerability, do you feel that actually strengthened your leadership?
Yeah, I would say that when I dropped my mask, the world didn't end. And that's what I thought might have happened.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's not gonna be there. I became a much better leader, and I would definitely advise and recommend other people to do the same.
What do you think, just going back to the dad question, what do you think people misunderstand about dads of SEN children?
Well, that's a really...
Do you think are dads part of the conversation as much as they should be? So talking from personal experience, when I take my son to SEN spaces, the majority of the parents there are mums.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? I know this is a tricky question. I'm probably putting you on the spot.
No,
but I love tricky questions.
It's a lovely question as well, and it's an important one. I suppose, again, from my background, it's almost like a generational thing, isn't it? Like, women are expected to do certain roles and men are expected to do certain roles. But for me, I've always been contrary to that. I've always tried to not be a traditionalist and do things 50-50 in the house.
Yeah.
Try to make it equitable, if you like. I never quite manage it, but I try my best to try and do all of those things. And it goes the same with the kids. So for a very long time since Noah was born, I've always had a non-working day, for instance. And that was not really heard of in the civil service, for dads to have non-working days, to take the time out. And people asking you, "So what are you doing?" "I'm looking after my child." And it's like, "Oh, well, what's your wife doing? What's your partner doing?" And it's like, that's not a question you should ever be asking. That's not important. It's actually nice for me to do it. I love it. I enjoy it. And the more that I share that, I then see other people doing something similar as well. A lot of my friends are I would say following the same path.
I do feel like it's really shifted. I think especially since COVID, there seem to be more dads taking that non-working time to look after their kids, to spend time with their kids.
And just building on that then brings to it's not even fair to then say it's just for the mother to take the brunt of the responsibility for going to the meetings, for having the phone calls. It's just as much as my responsibility. And I'll always be there where I possibly can do, and I always want to have that influence in my child's life. Maybe I'm slightly different in the fact that I know how important it is as well for that sense of belonging. So I recognise that I didn't have a really great sense of belonging growing up, because I didn't see many people with a physical difference like myself. And I didn't want Noah to be the only child in the school to be like him. And the older he was getting, I recognised that he was diverging more and more from what he would see his friends, but might not necessarily be his friends. Where now he's in an environment where everybody's the same as him. He doesn't even have to think about it. He's just himself. And I know how important that is. So that's extra motivation for me. And I would definitely advise any father listening to this, you'll get out a lot more of this. The more involved you can be in it, the better it'll be for you, but also for your child as well. And for your partner, without a doubt.
Yeah. And I think push back against those societal expectations that, oh no, it all falls on the mum, and, like, do what works for you. And I'm aware that for a lot of families, there is a gender pay gap. Women do tend to earn less than their male partners. And so for a lot of families, it's an economic decision, like, oh, well, you earn less. So as the mother, you're going to need to take the time. But I think my advice would be, if you can, then be part of it and show up. I think it's interesting what you said about, it used to be unheard of for dads to take a non-working day. After I had Kit nearly 7 years ago now, I had 6 months of maternity leave, and then my partner had 3 months of shared parental leave. So he was looking after Kit for 3 months. And I remember going back to work after those 6 months, and one of my colleagues asking me, so is he sending the baby to nursery and then he's just on the PlayStation all day? Like they couldn't even conceive that he was looking after his own child. Yeah. And this was 2019, but anyway, it just made me think of that example. Just as a follow-up to that, what would you say to, if there was a dad listening who wants that flexibility and wants to be showing up for their child, but is worried that it will look like they're checking out professionally? Do you think, is there a risk of that? How should dads navigate that? I'm really keen to get your view on it.
My instinct is that it should never have to even be a risk at all. And it shouldn't be a case of asking your employer for a favour. It could be something where you engineer it like a business case. Yeah. You're saying, if I can change my hours at work, if I can change the structure of my work, this is the value that you're going to receive in recompense. So I'll be here for the next 5 years. I'll be showing up as the best version of myself. I'll be highly performing. Whereas if this doesn't happen, there's likely to be a significant cost, whether it's to my sickness, my stress levels, my performance levels. Ultimately, I could leave the role altogether. And then you've got other costs that come into it, whether it's attrition, whether it's recruitment costs. So if you engineer it as a business case and do it logically, it should never feel like a risk or that you're checking out. It could be it could strengthen your position at the same time. Yeah. And that's part of what I did as well. Yeah. I went through it and made sure that people could understand what they'll get back in return, rather than me checking out, which can be a perception. But yeah, if you talk it through and manage everyone's expectations, I think there's a sensible way forward with that works for everybody.
So you can be an SEN parent and a successful leader.
100%. 100%. I've shown that. I've seen many other parents that are in that same situation as well. But I've also seen many parents. I spoke to 3 people last week who were leaders, and they felt that they had to go the other way. They felt that they had to then leave their employment altogether and be that stay-at-home parent. And it kind of breaks my heart a little bit hearing that, knowing that actually it could impact their happiness and their long-term future for the next 5 or 10 years, when it doesn't have to be like that as well. And it's not fair. And I feel really strongly about that. It doesn't have to be like that. And employers should be flexible enough to know that there's another way forward that will keep that employee and help them perform to the best of their abilities, but also be there for their family at the same time as well.
So it's sustainable performance as a senior leader.
And that's my game. It's engineering a sustainable career for those parents who are senior leaders, but also parenting a child with complex needs. So that's what I'm all about, and that's what I'm advocating for 100%.
I guess it's, if you think about the standard career ladder, you go, okay, right, I do that step. And then you're a senior leader and you don't really bring any of your personal life into work and, you're focused on that. But obviously for an SEN parent, that's not sustainable. Yeah. So if you say that, well, there is sustainable performance, there is a way that you can achieve that. Is it about finding the balance? And so it might be, well, I have one non-working day a week and that's something that I talk to my employer about. Or is it about thinking differently around success?
I think it's a little bit of everything there, like you've said. At certainly one point, I thought I might have either had to be a good leader or a good parent. I couldn't be both, because my employment was taking up all of my energy, which meant that I didn't have much left to give on a night time. So I was never really present there,
Yeah.
but I was also not necessarily present during the day in meetings, which was quite challenging. And I then recognized actually it doesn't have to be like that. So you can engineer that non-working day. You can change your hours to make it work for you. As long as it's financially sustainable for yourself as well, it can be achieved. It might just take some forethought. It might take a little bit of thinking in a slightly different way, being creative about it as well. Like I said, if you're in that moment in time where you're expecting phone call after phone call after phone call, and if you're just thinking, oh, I'm trying to lead this meeting, but I'm going to get this phone call any minute. If you're able to then prepare and say, actually, I'm going to have this private phone call at 11 o'clock, that's something that is easily manageable, easy to put in your calendar. It means you can focus on it. And as long as your employee's not going, what's that in your calendar at 11 o'clock? And they're okay with it.
Yeah.
And you can make up time in different places, or they can just accept it and go, this is something that you need to do. And we applaud you for doing it. We want you to do it. Be there for your child, and then come back to us and be present when you're working as well.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by sustainable. And if you provide that for your employee, they will be with you for a long time, and they will give back, and they'll tell positive stories, and they'll want to be making sure that they're as productive as anybody else, if not more so.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by sustainable. So it's definitely achievable. It might just need a conversation or two, that's all.
If there's a parent listening and they feel like they're just surviving, what would your advice be to them?
The very first thing is just take stock of your energy levels. Understand where you at. Are you running on empty completely right now? Have you got a little bit left in the tank? Is there little things that you can put in place that are going to help you just kind of for you to get by to begin with, whether it's those fire breaks or making sure that you've got 15 minutes before you start work for yourself, and also those 15 minutes at the very end of the day. Have you got that time during the day? Have you structured your working week in a way that works for you as well?
Yeah.
And that's going to manage your energy levels and make sure that you're there at work, but you're also there at home as well. Is there anything in terms of priorities that can be dropped? So if something does come up, you've got an emergent change, something happens, you get that phone call, but previously you had lots of things to do. Are you able to just prioritize? Are you able to understand straight away what's going to drop off your list? So it's going to give you that time, so you're not feeling like you're having to do everything. You're just being practical about it as well. So there's definitely some things immediately that you can do that's going to help you. It just, rather than reacting to things, it's being able to prioritize and be intentional about what's going on in your day and where you're at with your energy as well.
I love that. Prioritize and be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's such a mantra for all parents to try and make it
100%,
more sustainable. Yeah, amazing. Is there anything you wanted to ask me, or anything we've not talked about that you want to talk about?
Well, I've absolutely loved this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. Yeah. What would your advice be? Same question to you. What would your advice be to other people in the same situation?
I'm not sure I'm in a position to give advice, because I still feel like I'm working it out. I think the main thing, the thing that's made the biggest difference to me is to find your village, your community of parents in a similar boat. So whether that's going along to, SEN focused youth clubs, or even just joining parenting forums online, being able to talk to other parents and find out, well, how are you juggling it? How are you balancing it? For me, that's made the biggest difference, because you feel like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person dealing with this. And I think especially, if you can bring those authentic conversations to your workplace, you'll discover that there's actually quite a few people that you're working with that might be in that boat. So yes, I'm still working it out. I'm in a kind of transition period in my career at the moment. I was somebody who thought, by this age, because I'm in my late 30s now, I thought, I'd be flying, I'd be at the top of my game professionally. And it hasn't worked out like that, because I've had to recalibrate because of the demands of parenting an SEN child. So I guess my second bit of advice would be, work out what you really want from life. Like, I'm still so invested in my career. I'm always going to be ambitious. I love my job. I love what I do. I get so much enjoyment out of work. But actually, I need to do what's best for my family and for my children. So yeah, work out what works best for you in terms of making those changes. So for me, it was taking a step down.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, it might be adding a non-working day to their schedule. But yeah, just work out what's best for you and your family.
And so I've loved hearing that. And so what I'm also hearing from you is that you're still, I mentioned at the start, of being in alignment with your values, your strengths, your identity, and you have not gone far away from that. Yes, you're classing it as a step down, but it's still in alignment with what makes you happy and what makes you motivated, and bigger picture of what you do. You're doing it for the right reasons, right intentions, and it doesn't always have to be that you take that step down. It might just be for a period of time, and then you take that step forward again. It's one step back, maybe to take 2 steps forward. So it depends on how you're framing it. You'll probably never feel like you've cracked it, because there's always something else that evolves, something that changes. Yeah. But just be kind to yourself during the process. Have that compassion, knowing that you'll never be perfect, and that takes the pressure off yourself. Talking to other parents, other people that are in the same situation does help as well. Yeah. You get that little snippets of advice, those little tips. Even giving my little boy the opportunities to go to Sparks, go to different kind of groups that he's going to feel comfortable in. But I can speak to parents, I can speak to the leaders that are there. If I've got any other questions, anything that comes up that I'm not sure of. Some of it's just educating yourself during the process. But I would definitely say be kind to yourself, because you'll never, ever be perfect during it. And there'll always be something else that evolves and comes up that you weren't expecting. But once that's happened and you learn from it, you'll know for next time as well.
Yeah.
And then if you can share that with other people, even better as well.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think the other thing I would add is that for a long time, I felt that my son's complex needs were my fault and were a reflection of a failure on my part.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a good period of time where I felt like, well, I'm failing as a parent, I'm failing at work, I'm failing in my relationship, in all areas of my life. So I think it is actually just being kind to yourself and having a bit of a reality check. Like, no, it's not a failure. It's going back to what you were saying about it's a failure of systems, of structures in which we operate. It's not a personal failing. I think that is really important for parents to take away, because I think it's so easy to blame yourself. And I think especially as a mother, you think, oh, I've grown this child, so it must be because of me that they are this way. And actually, the reason you're feeling like a failure is because that's what society tells you to think, and don't listen. Have a been advice, don't listen.
Absolutely don't listen. Tell them, you say that quite politely.
I could have said stronger words. Yeah,
I'd agree with that as well, 100%.
Well, thank you so much for this. It's honestly, I could have chatted to you for hours and hours. It's been a really interesting conversation. Where can people find out more about you and get in touch with you?
You can particularly find me on LinkedIn. There's a few free things that I can provide you with if you connect with me. Give me your email address and I can provide things like top tips on how to prevent burnout. I've also got a website, tonyaddison.com. And if you want to email me about anything that we've discussed, you can reach me at tony@tonyaddison.com as well.
Well, thanks, Tony. We'll put all of those in the description.
Thank you.
So people can just click on those. And thank you so much.
And likewise, thank you so much. I've absolutely loved this. And I'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah. And that's it for this week's conversation on Parenting Off-Script. Thank you so much for joining us and for being part of this community. I hope today's episode offered you a moment of recognition, a practical tip, or even just a little bit of comfort. If you enjoyed this episode, please do 2 things for us. Hit that subscribe or follow button on whatever app you're listening on right now, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or elsewhere. This is the best way to make sure you never miss a new episode. Come and join the conversation online. Find us on your usual social media platforms by searching for Parenting Off-Script. We'd love hearing your experiences, your questions, and what you'd like to cover next. Sharing this podcast with another said parent you know is also the highest compliment you can pay us. So thank you in advance for helping our community grow. Until next time, keep trusting your gut, keep advocating, and keep parenting off script.